This is Richard Skinner in London with another BBC Rock Hour special.
The following concert will be even more enjoyable with a cup of Dannon yogurt in your hand. The Dannon people are pleased to present the BBC Rock Hour on behalf of all their 15 flavors.
This broadcast is also brought to you by Levi Jeans. Their quality never goes out of style.
This broadcast has been recorded on Scotch recording tape. It's brought to you by the makers of new improved Scotch Master Series cassettes for true, pure sound from your stereo. With Scotch recording tape, the truth comes out. And in the next hour, I'll be talking to Phil Collins, the drummer and singer with Genesis, about his first solo album, Face Value. Behind the Lines from the album Face Value by Phil Collins. Phil, it's a rather different version to the way that Genesis used to do it.
Yeah. The reason we did it, well, the reason I did it rather, was I was convinced that there was a dance tune itching to get out, really. And the way we did it was obviously a different tempo and it wasn't quite as danceable. And when we were recording it in Stockholm, the Genesis version that is, we ran it back fast because we wanted to clear a couple of tracks, you know. So we ran it back fast to save a bit of time, and suddenly there was this like, and I thought, this will be great, that, it'll be great. So I thought, a bit of Jackson 5 stuff, you know, so I thought I'd take it into the studio. And I said to the guys, you know, why don't we do it like that? And they said, well, we've done it this way, so why don't you cover it? No one else ever covers our material. So I am, in fact, the first cover version of any one of our songs.
Actually, mentioning the Jackson 5, the soul or funk feel comes through quite strong on this album, and that is a side of you that I wasn't that aware of before, I must admit.
No, I try and put a bit of it into Genesis, you know, but like it gets changed, obviously, because...
There are three of you.
There are three.
Yeah.
That's it.
Why the solo album, then? I mean, is it just because everybody else in the band has done one?
No. I basically had accumulated all these songs, and I didn't really want to give them to the band if they weren't going to be done the way I wanted them to be done. And Misunderstanding and Please Don't Ask from Duke were both part of this batch of songs that we're talking about. And I played them to the group when we came out of doing the Duke album. And they liked Misunderstanding and Please Don't Ask, and liked a few of the other things, but maybe would have ended up changing some of them. And I didn't really, you know, I said, well, I'd rather hold on to them in that case, because I have very specific ideas as I want them to sound like.
But Misunderstanding actually did end up on Duke very much as you would have done it yourself.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the demo is exactly the same, but it's got la 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 instead of the words. But I mean, the demo is exactly the same.
Why don't we have a listen to it now? That's a track from Duke that might well have ended up on Face Value that didn't. Misunderstanding, also a hit single, so...
It was in America, yeah. It did very well in America for us.
You've had quite a lot of hit success of late. I just wondered, are you changing your attitudes to making records, or do you think people are coming round to your way of thinking?
I think it could be a bit of both, really. I mean, singles... It's much easier now to get a single that's got a bit of imagination in the charts. You know, at one point it was you either made an album and then you made a single that was hopefully a taster, but you couldn't actually go too far with it. And I think In the Air, for instance, is a very demanding song for a single. I mean, I didn't really think it was going to be a hit at all. I mean, I didn't even want them to put it out. I was going to let them put I Missed Again out, which is my first choice. But then the record company said, well, I'm sure In the Air, you know, we like it, let's put it out. So I said, okay.
You mentioned I Missed Again. Now that again has a sort of soul-y, almost Stax feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the music I listen to at home is black music, to be honest. I mean, and jazz, but I mean, basically, I come from the sort of the higher players, Jackson's, Earth, Wind & Fire school. And especially having some of those guys on the album as well, kind of made it come home a bit more. In fact, there was a bit of problem when I was cutting the album. I mean, I had that same thing kept cropping up, that it kept sounding like a white album. Obviously, it would do to a degree, but I mean, there is a difference in the way it's cut. And I went to New York to cut it. It didn't sound very good. Came back here, did about 4 or 5 cuts here. Didn't sound very good. Kept sounding like a Queen record, you know. It was very British. So I looked through my favourite albums, and the one name that kept cropping up was this bloke Mike Reese, who did the mastering for the Earth, Wind & Fire, the Jacksons people. So I rang him up. It was very easy. I just got the telephone number from the directory and said, hello, can I speak to Mike Reese? They said yes. I said, can you do my album? He said yes, and that was it.
And it worked.
Yeah, and he came back and it sounded great. So I wanted it cut in that way, you know, because they definitely sound different.
I'm sure that most people aren't even aware that a cut makes any difference. You know,
No.
you know, you press a record, you press a record.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I came very close to sort of disaster, really, because, I mean, I didn't realise that a cutting engineer can have so much control. You know, it's basically another producer, because if you can take a tape that sounds great into a cutting room, and he can balls it up completely if he wants to.
Right, because of course, I mean, your album's got a lot of dynamic range if we want to
Yeah.
talk about technicalities.
And it's quite long as well,
Yeah.
which doesn't help, you know. They see 24 minutes and they say, oh, no, can't do that, John, you know. So then, you know, your grooves get smaller. I learned quite a lot about it, actually, in the last sort of few months.
Well, I hope this one sounds all right. I Missed Again.
So you finally came right out and said it, girl. Why took you so long? It was in your eyes. That looks never far too long. I'm waiting in line. Would you say if I was wasting my time? Did I miss again? I think I missed again. I think about it from time to time. When I'm lonely and on my own, I try to forget and yet still.
Actually, there are many different styles on this album,
Yeah.
it strikes me, because, I mean, there are some tracks, dare I say it, that even remind me of a Barry Manilow-style ballad.
Yes.
The romantic.
Yeah. In fact, if I'd have put drums on that particular track you're talking about, it would have been that way. And I guess it's because I didn't that it kind of, to me, it makes it a bit more respectable. Because you're dying, you know the drums are going to come in and go, da, gung, 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 sure, Mandy. You know, you're just waiting for it to come in, really. But I wanted to keep it. Originally, I presume you're talking about You Know What I Mean.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to keep it just as a piano and voice, because it's basically a very personal song. And but I was fortunate enough to get Arif Mardin to do the arrangements, the string arrangements, and he did such a nice arrangement for it that I thought, okay, I can't let this pass.
Actually, for a drummer to leave drums out now, that is pretty
I know,
good
yes.
going. How much of the actual playing have you done on this album yourself? Because we've talked about other people coming in
Right.
and helping you.
Well, I originally the idea was to do as much as possible and maybe not use so much guitar, which I don't play. So I did it at home, in fact. I got an 8-track studio at home, and I recorded all the basic backing tracks at home in a sort of very lazy, sort of relaxed atmosphere.
Took quite a while too, didn't
Oh
it?
yeah, well it was over a period of a year and a half.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a year and a half sort of fully at it. I mean, it was just a question of when it felt right.
Yeah.
And I did all the keyboards at home myself, engineered it myself, and I did the drum machine stuff. And I couldn't get really good drum sound at home, so I left that for the studio. But I took all the tracks in with foundations. I mean, all the 8 tracks were full up. Took them in, and all the basic rhythms and tempos and keyboard stuff was all done at home. So it was built on a relaxed foundation, which I wanted it to be.
We've been talking about Earth, Wind and Fire and the involvement of their brass section. Must have been a heck of a thrill to actually get them to come along, you know.
Yes, again, you see, cheek was sort of the main thing. I mean, I knew what I wanted to hear, and I said to the American record company, Atlantic, I said, a friend of mine on the West Coast who actually gave me a lot of encouragement. I said, you know, if you really want me happy, make me a happy boy, see if you can get the Earth, Wind and Fire horn section. So he rang them up, and they said, yeah. It was as easy as that. And the first time I met them was when I went over there. I mean, I did about 3 or 4 weeks actually in London, once I'd transferred the tapes. Then we went to Los Angeles to do the vocals and to do the horn parts, essentially. And they came in with their arranger, Tom Tom 84, who up until this point I'd thought was a computer, right? Because it's always in big letters, Tom Tom 84. I thought, oh, this is how they do it. This is how they're so good, see? But in fact, he came in, this short bloke from Chicago, and he came with his cassette player and said, what do you want to hear? So I said, I'll show you. So he put the tape on very quietly, put his cassette player on, and I went, right, it's very easy to do that. You know,
He has to translate it to
yes,
music, yeah, right.
but it's not very easy to sort of blow it when you're sort of blowing these really high notes on trumpets. And the next day they came in and they played it perfectly. You know, and they basically, I sort of gave them the sketches for all the bits that I wanted them to play on. And they put a lot of energy into it, actually. We had them for about 3 or 4 days. And they're in fact going to do the next Genesis album as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I know that that's sort of in the making now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I do any gigs myself, they're going to be doing some gigs with me.
Fantastic.
That's Hand in Hand from Phil Collins' solo album Face Value. And you're listening to a BBC Rock Hour special.
I was so spoilt in a way with the musicians.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
That,
come on, you only have Clapton on there as well. I mean, if you want a
Yeah.
guitarist, you get Clapton.
Yeah,
That's
well, actually,
amazing.
he's a neighbour. That's why I got him, because
Ah.
he lives down the road and we're drinking partners. So he came round one night and just did a couple of things up in the bedroom.
He's a charming man, isn't he?
He is. Much
funny.
maligned person, as I
Yeah.
right?
Well, I know the one time I've met him, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But I went along in fear and trepidation. Of the, you know, I still had Clapton is God sort of
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
head. And he's such a nice, regular person.
Right.
Good to work with as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't really worked that much with him. I say he came up to the house and did a couple of things there, but mainly we just spend a lot of time at Ripley Cricket Club or
Yeah.
my local pub just drinking. I mean, not just drinking, of course. We occasionally stop. But, no, we have more of a social
Yeah.
friendship than a musical one.
In that situation, do you tell him what to play, or does he just get in there and do it?
Well, this is actually one of the things that we fell down on, because he came round originally to do the dobro thing on Roof is Leaking. And we went through it a couple of times, like this is at the house, right? So it was very relaxed, you know, it was like really late at night. And he played perfectly, but unfortunately my technical expertise, what with a couple of too many, made it impossible to use what I'd recorded. And so when he came round to the studio to redo it, I wanted to hear what he'd played before, right? And he doesn't do that very well. You know, he basically, it's off the, you know,
He
you either
feels
get
it,
it as,
yeah.
as you get it, which is really fine. That's the way I want to do the whole album, really. But unfortunately, I just had too many preconceptions as far as this was concerned. But I mean, the first night when he come round, he was really in the mood for playing, and we did the track that he's actually on, which is "If Leaving Me Is Easy." That was done. You know, he was in the mood to play, and he just said, "Put something else on, let me play." And he's playing very, very lightly on it. And some people claim they can't even hear him at all. But I paid him, so he's there.
I'll listen out right now.
I read all the letters, I read each word that you've sent to me. And though it's past now, and your words start to fade, all the memories I had still remain.
Leaving Me Is Easy. Phil, it's an interesting thing. I read somewhere that initially you had a different title for this album, something like Inside My Head or something.
Well,
Was
I
it
wanted to call it Interiors.
Interiors. That's right.
But unfortunately, Woody had got there first, and then I wanted to call it Exposure, and then Fripp, his his only solo album was called Exposure, and basically, I was trying to find a word, because the album, lyric-wise, and even musically, most of the lyrics and music came at the same time, was born out of my great sorrow, and they're basically emotionally exposing, and I wanted to kind of, especially with the cover as well, which is like, you can't get much closer than the picture.
Yes.
I just wanted to be basically a very, personal thing.
Yeah.
And trying to find the right word, the right title, was not very easy, because a lot of the best words have been used.
And yeah, because not wanting to harp on it, you've been through a divorce,
Yeah.
which is a hell of a thing to go through. Did you actually find that positive things came from it, though?
I did,
in a
actually,
sense?
yeah. I wrote a lot of this music as a result of it. It just, more than anything else, it was time. I suddenly had time on my hands, because I got 2 kids as well. So it was basically, suddenly there was,
An empty house.
yeah. So, I went out into the studio and just worked an awful lot and just wrote. And things like Please Don't Ask and Misunderstanding and I Say All This Stuff basically came out of it. So I did find it pretty stimulating. But people like to be depressed, actually. I mean, if you're depressed, then you put on a sad record. You don't put on something that's going to cheer you up. I mean, people do tend to revel in it, and I can't escape the fact that once I got used to the fact that this was the way it's going to be, I try to put it to good use in a way.
Right. Talking about breakups and things like that, I mean, obviously there is no breakup in Genesis.
No.
You're now doing another album, as you
Yeah.
say. How strong is the current Genesis thing, and where does it go from here, do you think?
Well, I mean, contrary to sort of thinking that it's going to be fading back, because of all the solo things. It was Tony and Mike have also got solo careers as well. It's actually made the reverse effect, because we now keep any of the material that we write ourselves, mainly for our own albums, and we sort of refound something when we did Duke that we actually we actually forgot about writing together from scratch. So half of Duke was done like that, and we've got enough material for a double album now.
A double?
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to put out a double, we could, and we've only been rehearsing a couple of months. So we're ready to go into the studio and record now, of stuff that's just from scratch, from just playing, blowing together, which is good, because it gives the band a different identity from us individually. Anything we feel strongly about or got strong opinions about, we can do on our own.
Yeah.
And now the band is just a vehicle for writing together,
And
which,
the old-
which you never get round, because there's 3 people pitching in at the same time.
And the old adage about go away and work with other people and find more inspiration is very true, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, with me it is. I mean, the other guys don't do much apart from the band, but I mean, I do anything and everything sort of that I'm asked. I used to do anything and everything. Now I just actually sort of do a bit more picking and choosing.
It must be love, the feeling. This must be love. Oh, this must be love, the feeling. This must be love. Well, I wait every day, all just in case you decide to call, and I can hardly
This is an album, Phil, which has a lot of your own material, and
Mm-hmm.
we've already discussed a lot of your own interior thoughts and your
Yeah.
mind in it, and yet suddenly there's an old John Lennon song on there,
Yeah.
Tomorrow Never Knows, which is the last track on your album, was the last track on Revolver. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, I just thought that it was one of those songs that was overlooked. Grossly overlooked, actually. It was a bit far out at the time, you see, because everyone was into the sort of the Eleanor Rigby's and Yellow Submarines. And Tomorrow Never Knows was one of those songs. Well, they used to do it on the B-sides as well. You know, they used to really stretch out on the B-sides and go a bit out. And because no one ever played the B-sides in those days. So it was when I noticed. But Tomorrow Never Knows was definitely a song that everybody took the album off before it got to, you know. You know, it was after the nice melodic tracks and it was a bit too much to take. So I thought, I also like the chord sequence. There's only 2 chords in it, but they're very nice chords, you know. They're just if you can't play the keyboards very well, which is I can't, you know, it's nice to get around easy chords. And what I tried to do really was just to drag the melody up a bit more because it's quite a melodic song, and they didn't actually do it very melodically. I mean, they did it the way that it should have been done, presumably, but I just took what I consider the essence of the song and just. It wasn't actually supposed to be an interpretation of it. It was mainly a dig in the ribs and saying, listen, you know, you should go back and listen to the original. Because I think it's, you know, it's got some very interesting stuff on the album in general, actually.
Well, I'm going to venture an opinion here, and I don't often like cover versions of Beatles classics, but I think yours is better than the original. It
thank you.
somehow has an essence of something more there. And
Well, I spent a lot of time. I actually did it about a year and a half ago.
yeah, because I was going to ask you, was it
Yeah.
meant to be a tribute to John Lennon? Or
No,
something?
I guess a lot of people take it that way. But that's, you know, some people will look on it with affection. Some people will look on it as if I'm just, you know, trying to
Jump on the bandwagon or something.
which was the second thing I thought once when I heard he was murdered. I mean, the first thing I thought was, well, a drag, but I mean, the second thing was, oh Christ, they're going to think that. But I mean, because some people think if the record's out Friday, they recorded it Monday. You know, I mean, I'm sure some people really think that. And it was all finished, mixed by, I mean, like November, which is obviously a long time before it happened. But and I'm glad that people are going to listen to it and maybe, you know, like you like it. So hopefully it's not going to be looked on too badly.
Turn off your mind, relax to flow downstream. It is not dying. It is not dying. Lay down thoughts, surrender to the void. It is shining. Oh, it is shining. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I dreamed of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, the bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why? Then oh why can't I?
That's a slightly different version of the ending there, Over the Rainbow.
Yeah, well, I think lyrically they're kind of, they are actually connected, but I've always loved those old sort of Hollywood show tunes, you know, and Daryl, when we're playing with Genesis, and we play these big hockey arenas, and they've all got, like, the shower rooms, you know, all tiles and stuff, they've got lovely acoustics in there. So before the gigs, me and Daryl sort of huddle into there and play all through, like, you know, Send in the Clowns and all the old schmaltzy stuff, you know, and Daryl's playing 3,000 chords for every bar, as nightclub guitarists do. And we used to do Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and it was just such a nice vibe to it, a nice feeling to it, that I thought I'd put it on just a tail end, just for the people that, you know, actually make it to the end of side 2. They can actually hear it, you know.
And of course, it's again ironic that on a Lennon track you then sing. Yeah, well,
Right.
such is life. Life is Weird, you at the moment in Britain have a massive hit single. You must be amazed at how well it's done. In the Air
Amazed,
Tonight.
yes, true.
Well, earlier you already said you weren't expecting it to be released as a single.
No, right. In fact, what was going to be happening was I missed again. But when I went to cut the album in New York, Ahmet Ertegun from Atlantic Records, he was been very enthusiastic about even from the demo stage upwards, and he let me have a lot of his time. And when he came to the cut when I was in New York, and he said, with In the Air on the album, you see, is different from the In the Air single, and it's been edited a little bit, and there's these extra drums. And he said, listen, where's one? You know, tell me where. I said, well, there's one there. And he said, no, I know that's where one is. You know it, but the kids don't know where one is, right? So you got to put some extra drums in it. And I've just been, I've been 3 or 4 months on this album in the studio. I said, I don't want to do any more. I just finished it, you know. He said, well, just go and put some more drums in it. It's going to be a hit if you do that. So I went back to London with tail between my legs and put tape on, and I couldn't be bothered to remix it. So what they did, they put the mix on. I went into the drum room, played some drums to it, and we recorded it direct onto another bit of 2-track. So it sort of eliminated the fact of having to remix it, because that's what, you know, I got it just how I wanted it to sound, and of course something would have been different if I had to remix it.
Yeah.
And then the record, you know, it was originally for American release, and then America said, well, I don't know if it's, you know, the other people in Atlantic said, well, I don't know if it's going to be the single or not. And England picked up on it, Virgin, and they said, well, let's us put it out. And now Atlantic are going to put it out because it's a hit here.
Wonderful
So
drum
it's,
sound. Those heavy drums.
Yeah, well, that's
Whoa.
the Hugh Padgham patent drum sound that we used with Gabriel, and we used on my album too.
It's great.
Yeah, I like it very much, actually. It's very original sound.
Phil, it looks like 1981 is going to be quite good for you.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I'd like to do some gigs with the album, which obviously will be a good feeling as well. But so the Genesis album's in the pipeline, and getting that many people's schedules together, obviously, it's obviously going to be a problem. But I mean, this album, as far as I'm concerned, is the first of a whole bunch. You know, I mean, it's not like a solo album. And I've got it out of my system. I can go back, you know, hibernate, and I really want to sort of just to carry on.
Good. Look forward to that, Phil. Thanks for talking to
Cheers,
us.
Richard. Thank you all.
That's In the Air Tonight, the hit single by Phil Collins, ending this BBC Rock Hour special, which was brought to you by the people who make Scotch Metafine metal particle recording tape and the new improved Scotch Master Series cassettes for pure sound from your stereo. With Scotch recording tape, the truth comes out.
The BBC Rock Hour has been brought to you by Dannon Yogurt, a good thing going for you every day.
The BBC Rock Hour was brought to you by Levi Jeans. Their quality never goes out of style.
This is Richard Skinner in London. Join me again soon with another top name in the world of rock music, right here on the BBC Rock Hour.